The Tempest is a play by William Shakespeare dated around 1610 and 1611. It was first performed in this year, 1611, at the court by the king's men, with very little scenery and theatrical effects, which meant that the audience had to use very much their imagination. And to the general public, The Tempest is not the most famous Shakespeare's play, but it is extremely important and respected within literature and the theatre, and its genre is that of a romantic comedy, although it does have many deeper themes and hides a criticism of Elizabethan society. The title can be interpreted in two different ways. On the one hand, in a literal sense, as it is a play about a group of people who are shipwrecked by a storm, and secondly, it can be interpreted symbolically, as a representation of the psychology of the characters. This is known to be the last play he wrote alone, so it has been suggested that this play is a symbolic farewell of Shakespeare to the theatre. And this last goodbye is parallel to one of the main characters, Prospero, who at the end of the play gives up his magic and his art and requires to be freed by the public with an applause. Many critics have connected this character with Shakespeare because, apart from this last goodbye, Prospero, throughout the play, makes reference to the Great Glove, which can be interpreted as the world or as Shakespeare Glove Theatre. And here we have a line from Prospero who refers to life as the Great Glove itself.
The Tempest is a play about magic, betrayal, love, and forgiveness. The story begins with a storm that strikes a ship carrying Alonso, Ferdinand, Sebastian, Antonio, Gonzalo, Stefano, and Trinculo, who are on their way to Italy. This storm is magically created by the spirit Ariel and caused by Prospero's magic, who was the Duke of Milan, but was betrayed by his brother Antonio 12 years ago. It is set on an island where Prospero and his beautiful daughter, Miranda, live. With this storm, Prospero plans to reverse what was done to him and to his daughter and regain his position. With his magic, he separates the survivors into different groups. Ferdinand, who is found by Prospero and Miranda. Prospero's plan is to encourage a romantic relationship between them two. Trinculo and Stefano, who are found by Caliban, Prospero's slave. This is a group that will act as the play comic relief. Sebastian and Antonio, who will attempt to kill Alonso and Gonzalo, so Sebastian can become king, but this conspiracy will be thwarted by Ariel. Later in the play, these nobles will flee a guilt for their crimes against Prospero and each other. The ship captain and the sailors, who will sleep until the final act. At the end of the play, Prospero forgives all who have committed crimes against him, and his former title, Duke of Milan, is restored, and they all set sail for home.
Traditionally, this play has been compared to King Lear, as it carries a notion that life itself is a transition, and in The Tempest, this notion of transitiousness of things appears with the feeling that man's life is just an illusion or a dream, as it is represented with these famous lines. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. This notion is strictly connected to the mind of Shakespeare in his last years, as Bradley says. Through the character of Prospero, we can see that what was first a passion later becomes a moment of melancholy and mystical thought that the great world is nothing but a dream. And it is through this character also that Shakespeare has the ability to spare and forgive, as we can see in the final act. It can be suggested also that Prospero is a tool used by Shakespeare to criticize the controlling nature of religion. For example, Prospero dominates the island in which the play is set as a self-imposed god. And his revengeful portrayal may be a critique by Shakespeare to suggest that religion should not restrict society. Also, the play has only one primary female character, Miranda, which illustrates the characteristics that represents the ideal woman within Elizabethan society. The Tempest portrays women as beings that accept the ideal role that they are expected to take on by the request of the man. The play does not give women the voice that they deserve. It makes them nothing more but possessions. From a feminist perspective, The Tempest portrays an Elizabethan society that doesn't give women a voice, but rather weighs on how to be the ideal woman. The Tempest is a play that has many themes, and it is a play that has many themes. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the play. It can be seen in the play, and it can be seen in the pl But nowadays, some critics, especially Kevin Ohi, have suggested that the play can be read through a queer perspective. The book Shakespeare suggests that The Tempest has enough queer moments, but it is important to note that queer is understood simply as gay sexuality. It can be seen also, as the book says, that any visible hetero relation is extremely connected to parenting, which stress importance of normative sexuality and maternity. For example, when Prospero wishes to give birth to himself and to everybody else. Recently, new films of The Tempest have been made evoking this queer reading. An example of this could be found in the film The Tempest by Derek Jarman in 1979, which more than an adaptation, it is considered to be a remake, as the film suppresses most of the original text and rearranges the remaining lines to evoke and represent the punk and gay counterculture in Britain on the 70s. Example of this queer reading in the film can be found, for example, in the relationship between Prospero and the spirit Ariel. In this film, Caliban and Ariel can be seen as extensions of Prospero's psyche, representing hetero and homosexuality. Prospero's obsessive demands for royalty can be interpreted as the imposition of the homosexual and heterosexual desire, and it can also explain the rejection of Caliban and his preference for Ariel. Whereas he cruelly punished Caliban for his heterosexual advances on Miranda, he praises Ariel for organizing the glamorous wedding, staged as a celebration of the male bonding. Prospero promises freedom to Ariel in return for his royal services, acquiring a sexual undertone, and connecting the idea of freedom as the consummation of the homosexual desire.
Equally, Caliban's reincorporation to Prospero's world can be seen as a triumph of homosexual over heterosexual desire. It is in this character, Caliban, where the film also represents this queer reading of the play. The choices made for him, instead of placing a black actor, Jarman chooses to cast a white actor. By doing so, he is represented as a non-threatening, old and stupid gay man. With this character, Jarman wishes to underplay the racial element that traditionally has surrounded Caliban, and instead makes a general statement on homophobia. All of that while racism was a big debate in Britain. Also, during the film, we have a sense of darkness which is only replaced with the moments that are made to cheer up the queer reading, like in the wedding, where we can see that Jarman plunges the audience into a distinctly queer world of colors, music, dance, and happiness that questions the heterosexual union of Ferdinand and Miranda. In this scene, Trinculo is represented as a drag queen. It can be said that this film evidently reconstructs the Shakespearean script into a film that is substantially different from the original, yet leaving a feeling of similarity due to the use of Shakespearean language and the characters. Last but not least, surely you all have already noticed the title of our presentation and that it might have sounded a bit strange. Mireia and I have decided to call it The Latest Tempest, as it is, presumably, the last play of him that we have knowledge of, but as many critics say, it may not be his last one. The name we have chosen for our discussion is The Latest Tempest instead of The Last, because we believe that Shakespeare will never be discussed enough. In other words, there are many more tempests yet to come. Thank you very much for your attention, and a very, very last applause to William Shakespeare. Thank you.